Start taking your seats. We are getting started. I will take all of your attention up here. Slowly, conversations come to a stop. Perfect. All right. So, again, thank you everybody for being here. We are excited to keep going on our Libertarian Party of Georgia convention. It's always a good time being here with you guys. It is 1 o'clock, so that means that today we are going to be hearing from Spike Cohen. Again, I've been reliably informed that the election was in 2020, and he was the vice presidential candidate for that. So I would like everyone to know that, since I apparently did not. So if you guys can filter in, we will be hearing from him again. Everybody, Spike Cohen.
Thank you so much again, Jared. Who was here earlier this morning when we did the You Are the Power presentation, and we all watched Jared have a moment of panic, and that's he's bounced back fully. I want to thank you all for being here. Now, for those of you who heard my call to come to process here, many of you heard the promise that someone's life was going to be changed here. And now, if I were a flim-flam man, I would wait to the end to answer that, to hold your attention all the way to the end. But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to reveal it right now. Whose life is being changed? Mine, by your being here and listening to my speech. Thank you. Thank you so much. You're touching me here, and everything in my life is changing. Anyway, I'm increasingly when I'm at these events, I would say I struggle to try to figure out exactly what I want to say to you because, A, I've been to a lot of these events and I've said the same things over and over, and B, I'm increasingly, when I'm speaking in front of people, I'm speaking to groups of non-libertarians or people who don't realize that they're libertarian yet, and I'm speaking with them about how and why they should be libertarian. So I guess I can try that here. Show of hands, who here considers yourself a libertarian? Well, my work here is done. Thank you guys so much. Thank you. Oh, thank you. No, listen, I'm happy to be amongst people who I don't have to try to convince that individual freedom and liberty is the best way forward. And not only do I not have to convince you, you're here to help us convince others and bring even more people into this movement. That's what we're here for. We are here, well, we're here to argue with each other too, but after that, we're here to spread liberty. We are here whether it's supporting candidates, whether it's getting behind initiatives we support, or nonprofits we support, like You Are the Power, whatever it is that we are doing, it is to help spread liberty. Now, in the last few months, my mind was actually changed about something. Because if you had asked me a few months ago, are people ready to elect a across-the-board, hardcore, dare I say, real libertarian who actually is running on libertarianism and who is actually going to implement that policy when they get into office, I'd say, you know what, I'm not sure we are. I think a lot of change needs to happen in the culture before we're ready for that. And I may still be right, but then Javier Milei got elected. Yes, thank you, in the back room then. In a country that has been voting for far worse authoritarians than we have. The political center or mainstream in Argentina has floated between socialists, fascists, and Peronists, who are sort of like flavor of the month authoritarians. What kind of authoritarian they are has changed over time, but it's always authoritarian. Always, always, always. And they've suffered as a result of it. Triple-digit inflation, terrible economic conditions, crime going through the roof as a direct result of that. Javier Milei killed 3 narratives by getting elected. Number one, the narrative of we can't get elected. And by the way, I'm talking about the narratives of what we say. It's things that are being said by others as well about us, but it's narratives that we have internally about ourselves and our ideas. And the number one is we can't get elected. Well, he got elected. The second one is kind of an offshoot of the first one. We can't get elected unless we really tone it down and water it down and kind of make it a little milquetoast, because I don't think people are ready to hear this. We're too far out of the mainstream. He got elected as an anarcho-capitalist who said that he was going to massively slash the size of government, starting with the welfare state. And he got elected on that. And then the third thing we get is, well, yeah, even if we do get elected, I mean, we're probably going to end up like, the people that we're replacing, and then we'll immediately have to start, qualifying all the promises we made. He got elected, and he has actually started massively slashing the size of government, again, starting with the welfare state. And they're seeing the immediate results of that. They're already seeing the benefits of that. Their triple-digit inflation is cooling down to near deflation. They're actually seeing the cost of goods and services go down for the first time in well over a decade. They're seeing their economy begin to rebound. Imports or exports are going up for the first time ever, or the first time in generations. Argentina is becoming one of the leading exporters of beef. They used to be in the top 3, or I think at one point they were number 1, and now they're back in the top. Slash the size of government. Now, I know all of the different confounding factors here. A big one is that a libertarian president in the United States couldn't do as much as he could do because of how their government is set up there. But a libertarian president could do quite a bit. Right off the bat, there is decades of bad presidential executive orders that could be undone with the same pen and phone that got them in there. The bully pulpit is there for the libertarian president to push forward libertarian ideas in the same way that President Milei is doing. And of course, a libertarian president, can refuse to sign anything and veto anything that disrespects the people, that does not uphold people's rights, that violates their rights, that adds a penny to the debt, and that robs them, and basically dare them to override the veto. There's a lot that a libertarian president could do, maybe not as much as Milei can do right off the bat, but the bottom line is, it looks like we actually can do it. And if we can do it at that high of a level for president, then we can absolutely do it for Congress, and we can absolutely do it for governors' mansions, and we can absolutely do it for state legislative races and for local races and city council races. If Javier Milei can do it, then there are things that we can be doing here that we might not have thought we could have done a few months ago. So then the next logical question to ask is, how? How do we get from where we are to that? How do we get from being upset about the status quo to making massive changes to it and bringing America closer to freedom than we are right now? Well, I think the first thing we have to do is look at the success. What happened in Argentina? Well, Argentina was the Argentine people were so frustrated and desperate about a system that was failing them. Yeah, that's pretty accurate here too. Maybe not to the same degree. We don't have triple-digit inflation, but we've certainly had double-digit inflation. We haven't had an outright depression for a decade plus, but we've certainly had a sideways economy that hasn't been serving the average American for quite some time. And with political corruption and crime and everything else, people are frustrated. But not only were they frustrated, they were met with someone who could explain why it was happening and how we could change it by undoing that. And he didn't pull punches. He didn't say, well, yeah, on the one hand this, but on the other hand that. And he said, this is a scam. It is a political crime that's being committed against you. You are being robbed to fund your own subjugation and destitution. And I'm going to stop that. So that was there. And then once they were able to elect him, then he actually did that. So we got to look at how we get there from here. Argentina was in, and probably still is in, a much, much, much more desperate situation than we are. And it's important to understand just how much worse it is. I don't have to tell you to imagine what it's like to be here, where we've been dealing with double-digit inflation and where the economy's been sideways for quite some time. Picture the price of everything doubling every 6 to 8 months for several years, and joblessness going up for the same several years, and the economy going down by double digits, even factoring in the fact that everything costs more, the GDP was still dropping by double digits for like the better part of a decade. Just think of how much more destitute we would all be in that situation. So obviously they were much more desperate, which makes them more open to hearing a much more radical message than maybe is ready here. But the bottom line wasn't that it was the desperation, it wasn't that just the conditions, it was that people understood how much they were being failed. I don't think that's happening here in the States, or at least it's not being directed the right way. There are many people who understand that the status quo is failing them. The problem is they think that all of it is to blame, that everything is the fault of exactly one half of the ruling class. And it can only be stopped and we can only be saved by the other half of the ruling class. That's literally what they think. We have to redirect that. And we have to show the people who don't understand how bad things are that it is pretty bad for a lot of people, and that it can get a lot worse if we let this continue. We can use countries like Argentina and Venezuela, and for that matter, Zimbabwe, North Korea, and many others, and say this is where we will eventually head. And if you didn't think that's true, go back think about 10 years ago. If I told you that we'd be in the condition that we are 10 years later, would you have believed me? So we can do that messaging. We can reach people, but we have to reach people. And I know how frustrating it can be. I know I'm on the internet more than I probably should be. Less than I'd like to be and more than I should be. We see the frustration. You, I'm sure, get as frustrated as me when people just don't get it. When they blame just one half of the ruling class instead of the whole thing. When they say that the problem is too much freedom and that we need to be even more regulated. And it's incredibly frustrating. And I think we all know what the answer is to deal with folks like that. You tell them that they're wrong. You make memes about how wrong they are. You call them stupid, and then you laugh about it. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. No, obviously that's not it. What we have to do is find out what their concerns are, because we have answers for that. Whatever their concern is, we have an answer. We have all the answers. That's why we're libertarians. We know everything. But we have to meet folks where they are on the things that they care about, and meet them with that message of liberty. We need not water it down. If you've got someone's attention, tell them what you actually think and explain why. Who here became part of the Libertarian Party because you were under the impression that it was as much as a 15 or 20% improvement over the status quo? Republicans or Democrats? You? You thought it would be about 15% better?
At least.
Okay, no, as much as. You thought it would be a marginal improvement over the Republicans or Democrats?
When I was in my 20s, yeah.
Okay, so that's one. So we had one, and that's fine. But for the vast majority of us, we saw this as a stark and necessary departure from the status quo. If we're presenting, first of all, if we're presenting our ideas in a way that's milquetoast, we're kind of lying to them. And so if someone gets into what it is we believe and find out that we told them something completely different, they now want to know why we were hiding that from them. We now look dishonest to them. So not only is, trying to water it down, not only is that not relatable, you're setting it up. If they actually want to go down that rabbit hole and find out about us, they're going to end up distrusting us. It actually backfires in the long term. So we can't do that. We have to be honest about what it is we believe, and we have to explain it in a way that connects with them. You don't just say, I want to cut the size of government, and I want to lower taxes, and I want to eliminate the welfare state. We've already got all the people that just saying that will get them on our side. You have to explain how these things are ruining our lives and their lives, and how we can fix it by getting rid of this stuff. This is how we make that connection. Now, a big part of how I've made that connection is through, or how I'm making that connection, is through You Are the Power. I'm actually, with our nonprofit, which is not aligned with any political party, or frankly, any political ideology, what we're doing with You Are the Power is we're putting the political argument aside. I'm not trying to convince anyone of anything. I'm showing them examples of people being abused by government. I'm not asking them what they think about government or about a political party or about or even about those elected officials. I'm saying, here is this thing that is happening. Here's why it's happening, and here's how you can help us. And then when I get them on that, I say, okay, now here's this next thing that's happening, and here's why that's happening, and here's how you can help us. And I do it over and over and over again. We have folks that are part of You Are the Power that do not consider themselves libertarian. We haven't even approached them about whether or not they're libertarian, and yet they are some of the most effective liberty activists I've ever seen, because they are consistently helping us on liberty cause after liberty cause after liberty cause, because they agree with us. Now, over time, that can develop into them identifying as a libertarian, because they're agreeing with what we have to say about these issues. But instead of arguing with them, I'm just giving them something to do. So that's one way to do it. Many other people are finding technological innovations that can help people live more liberty-minded lives. An example of that was someone that I met in Colorado last year, who is making these personal servers that you can have in your home that allow you to have these connected, basically your own connected social networks, so that you're not having to rely on big tech companies to be able to stay connected and share videos and all of this other stuff. And it's encrypted and it's private. There's VPNs and everything else in it, so that no one's tracking you and everything else. They have a technological innovation that is letting people live more liberty-oriented lives. He's not making a political argument. He's just saying, hey, if you don't want to be spied on, if you don't want to be subject to big tech censorship, here's how you can, but you still want to stay just as connected and just as in the know as everyone else, here's how you can do it. That's an example of that. And there are many different examples, including ones that folks are doing here across the country, here and across the country, of sharing liberty in ways that connect with people. But the number one thing to remember in all of this is that you have to make the connection. Find people in your community, online, that you're connecting with. Find out what it is that makes them tick, and then explain how our ideas and our solutions address their problems far better than the status quo. Always make the contrast between the failures and the misery that's caused by the status quo and the benefits and good that comes from us being more free. I understand that most or all of the people that are in here are not consequentialists or utilitarians. You believe in liberty because it's what makes the most moral and ethical and philosophical sense. That's why I'm here. The fact that it works is just the cherry on top for us. There's a reason for that. We're the early adopters. We're the innovators. We're the ones that adopt new ideas because they make the most sense and then try to explain them to others. Most people have a kind of, and I say this and it sounds like it's an insult, but it's not. It's just how people think. Most people think in a herd mentality. They want to see that other people think it too, and they want to see if it actually makes sense. Does it work? Okay, fine. It might sound like it makes sense, but does this actually work? And we get frustrated because we're like, well, who cares if it works? It's the right thing to do. And who cares if other people agree with it? It's what's right. That's how we think. That's not how normies think. It is what it is. I wish it wasn't. I wish we could, well, I'm not going to say that, but I wish that we could get other people's mindset in our spectrum, I'll call it. But I wish we could do that, but we can't. But what we can do is recognize that most people, they need to see that it works, or that the status quo isn't working. And they need to see that there are other people that agree with this. That's what we're doing with You Are the Power. And that's what we can do with the Libertarian Party. We can do that by talking about the issues that people are talking about, getting candidates who can dynamically connect with people on what they're talking about, the cost of living, crime, the absolute crisis meltdown on the border right now, the wars and threatened wars overseas, all of that we can have because we have the best answers, but we have to connect with them first. So what I am imploring you to do, whether it's with the candidates that'll be up right after me that are doing their debate, whether it's with candidates for local office, whether it's with the work that you do inside and outside the party, hopefully it's with what you do helping us at You Are the Power, make sure that you are trying to find people and make a connection with them so that you can share ideas of liberty with them. Because that's what gets not just libertarians elected, that's what gets libertarians created. So with that, I'm going to open the floor to questions. I think that they gave me an hour, and I think my time is much better spent answering questions from you than me just blathering on about stuff you already agree with. So again, I'd like to thank you all for coming. I love y'all, and with that, I will open the floor to any questions that people have. The first one is always greatest. Hey man, how are you?
Hey, good. I've got a question. I actually ran for office in Georgia back in 2010, and one of the things that I ran into, and I think that it's pertinent to this group since this is Georgia, is ballot access. We have set up where if you're a Republican, you're nominated, you're already on the ballot. If you're a Democrat, you're already on the ballot. Since they don't have an incentive to let us play in their ball field, how do we go about changing and affecting at the state level, trying to convince the people that are the ones that have to pass the legislation to allow us to extrapolate our beliefs in a way that has the exposure that they are denying us?
This is an excellent question, Colby, and it's also one of the most frustrating and difficult ones. And you already know that, but I'm going to kind of drill down as to why. Not only do we have the challenge, for those who did anyone not hear his question? Okay, so for Ted, he was asking about how we deal with ballot access and how we message that when the people who would have to make those changes to ballot access laws have a perverse incentive to not let us on the ballot. So not only is it every bit as frustrating as you said that we're having to go to the people that we're trying to get people to convince the people who have a vested interest not to let us on the ballot to let us on the ballot, but it's even more frustrating than that. I'm going to get to the good news in a moment, but it's even more frustrating than that because you have to be careful how you message that to people. Because if you message that the wrong way, what people hear is, whatever you think of me, I am a lost cause, don't even bother considering voting for me or supporting me or my party. Because people will say, oh, well, that's terrible, that's not fair, that's not right. Well, nothing I can do about it. I'm certainly not gonna, I can't vote for them. Looks like I won't even be able to vote for them, right? And so I tell people, I come from the sales world. It would be like if I, go and knock on someone's door and I say, hey, I'd like to tell you about this incredible product I have. And they go, great, let's hear about it. And I go, well, but first you need to know, I had to go through quite a bit to tell you about this incredible product that I have. Everyone was fighting. Anytime I tried to get it put in any brochures or magazines or websites, they wouldn't even let me on there. And the government's trying to keep me from being able to tell you about my incredible new product. And they go, okay, what is that? I go, well, listen, I just need you to know that it is nearly impossible for me to be able to tell you about my incredible new product. In fact, I'm not even allowed to tell you my incredible new product. They're going to close the door on me. They're going to say, oh, it sounds to me like, I can't, you're telling me that it's useless to try to find out about your product. So we have to be really careful how we message that. And I think it's possible that, especially if it's, because it is at the state level that this stuff has to happen, I have argued that you start first with why you're running. And again, making that connection with issues people care about. I hate to say it, guys, everyday people don't wake up and go, my God, I am so sick and tired of third-party candidates having a hard time getting on the ballot. They don't care about that. They're worried about the cost of living. They're worried about their kids' education. They're worried about, whether or not they're going to be able to say what they want to say on the internet. They're worried about cost of living, cost of everything. They're worried about their job prospects, or if they're retired, they're worried about if their pensions will be able to cover the spread of what, to be able to live, and healthcare. They're worried about those things. You got to connect with them on that and get them on your side with that. And that's when you can say to those people, and I will fight for you, I have to get on the ballot to do it. And the way that you couch it is always in, I have the answers, and those people know that we have the answers and the solutions. That's why they're fighting to keep us off the ballot. And once you've already told the beginning part of that story, here's the problems that are being caused, here's how they're being caused, and here's how our solutions will fix that, then you're able to say, and they know that we have the solution.
I have no urge to go against you, Doug Craig, business owner, Pershing Gulf vet, right? Hey, look, Joe, we're buddies. You know me. I'm a good guy. At least give me a hearing. And those are definitely some of the things for ballot access that we can do is getting to know your local state house reps and
hear what Doug said. He was talking about how because of a relationship he had with the state rep, they were actually able to get a bill with an actual hearing and get it, voted on and decided for ballot access. But that's true of everything. We don't have to get elected to try to affect our elected officials. Your elected official should know you by first name. Your state rep, preferably your local politicians too should fear you actually, but your state legislators should know you, at least be aware of you, and preferably know you by first name. They should know what you're about, and they should, when you're calling, emailing, or knocking on their door, they should have a pretty good idea of what it is you're about to say on that subject. Because there's another aspect to that. You'd be surprised, especially at the state level, maybe not on ballot access, but on certainly on a host of other issues. They don't even know how to vote on it. And their caucus may have some guidance, whether they're Republican or Democrat, on how to vote on it. But some things they may be like, hey, vote however you want. We don't really care about that. And I can tell you at Justin Amash, former congressman, told me at the federal level, which is obviously much higher than the state level, guess how many emails it took for on an issue for the average congressman to start taking an issue seriously? How many do you think?
3,000.
3,000, 12,
200.
200, 8. This to find out more about it. I didn't email any of them. A bunch of other people did, but I didn't email any of them. So you'd be shocked at how much just having that connection is. Does it guarantee that something's going to happen? No, not at all. But you can plant some seeds in some of these folks. And the reality is, there are a lot of representatives out there, and I've met them, who on certain issues are liberty leaning. And if they think that it's politically feasible to sell that to their constituents, they might try to do so. You can help them do that. So thank you for that, Doug. Any other questions? Oh, hey, go ahead.
Yeah, do you have any, looking forward to the next 12 to 24 months, do you have any predictions or speculation which is unconventional or would be surprising to this audience?
Do I have any? That is an excellent question, Bill. Do I have any do I have any predictions that are kind of go against what most people would think, that kind of unconventional prediction?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm around a bunch of people that make unconventional predictions. This would be a lot harder if I was in a group of like normal people, and then they'd go, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe you think that." Everyone here's gonna be like, "Yeah." Okay, I will tell you one that I think is very, very likely to happen. That I think just about everyone in here would probably agree with, but I think that most people outside of this building right now in the area would say, I don't think that's true. Why would they do that? That's stupid. I think that the Federal Reserve is shockingly getting the wrong lesson from all of this, because they jacked up the rates and it slightly cooled down inflation. They're going to believe their own numbers, which are BS. We're still in double-digit inflation, but they're going to believe them, and they're going to say, well, the economy has slowed down, but it's still doing all right, and they're going to jack the rates back down again. And they're going to do their own dead cat bounce, and I think it's going to trigger hyperinflation. It's going to tell the market the Fed was not serious about, lo and behold, the Fed was not serious about reducing inflation. I think we're going to see inflation that made the inflation of the last few years look like child's play. I think that's going to trigger potentially a recession, or certainly an inflation-adjusted recession. If we aren't in a recession, it'll be because prices are so high that it means that the GDP goes up. But that's just phony money being thrown around while people are suffering. I think I know Clint's going to have a follow-up to this. I think I don't know that that's going to happen, but I think it's a very high likelihood, because I don't see them saying, if they can convince themselves that inflation is cooled and that the economy's still kind of sideways, I don't see the Fed saying, yeah, let's stick to this. Let's stick to the high interest rates and the high mortgage rates and all of that, and try to keep cooling it down. I think they're going to say, oh, if we do this, we're going to be in a deflationary spiral, and then they're going to go back to what they really like to do, which is to jack rates down and spend.
Prediction to stand on that front. I was just curious if the kind of current topic du jour, if you've already covered it, I just got here, so if you've already answered it, just disregard. But has the
my end goal, he asked if what's going on in immigration has shifted my perspective at all with the border. No, I want to privatize the border, and I want to get the government out of it entirely, and that has not changed. I think that anytime I look at how do we handle something now using the channels we have, that is so heavily dependent on what's happening right now. I wish, and I've said this in a few interviews over the past few days on mostly conservative shows, there is a potential here for us to get closer to that, but it's going to take Texas and some of these other states to change their narrative a little. Right now, you have both Texas and the Biden administration arguing in federal court, that the role of immigration is a federal role. They're both saying the exact same thing. Texas is saying the Biden administration is not carrying out their role, and it amounts to them not doing anything about an invasion, and so we're stepping in and doing something about it. The Biden administration is saying, yes, this is our role, and we're doing it the way that we see that we should be doing it. But it is our role. Thank you so much for acknowledging that. And the judge is saying, all right, well, if it's your role, you got to let them back in. What I would like to see happen, I don't know if I will, because unfortunately, I think all of these people want it to remain a federal role. That's what it seems to be. What could get us closer to what I want and what most of us in here want, which is privatization and decentralization of this question, would be for Texas and other states involved to say, migration or asylum or refugee or any of that. It says nothing about any of that. It talks about naturalization, which is the process by which people that come here may become citizens, but that assumes they're already here. And the 10th Amendment is very clear. If the Constitution doesn't give a power to the federal government in the Constitution, laid out explicitly in the Constitution, it is to be left to the states or to the people. That's what it says, and it bears out. For the first 100 years of the United States existence, any immigration enforcement that was happening, there was mostly nothing, but anything that was happening was being done by the states, usually by the border states, if it was being done at all. And then it was in the late 1800s with the Chinese Exclusion Act that the federal government started getting involved in it. And the Democrats were able to get enough labor union activists into the Supreme Court to rule that the federal government had an inherent authority to do it. And it's that same skewed definition of inherent authority which led to the entire progressive era of the late 1800s, which is what led to the nightmare of Woodrow Wilson and the nightmare the nightmare of Teddy Roosevelt, Woodrow Wilson, Franklin Roosevelt, everything we've suffered since then. But it all started with the Supreme Court upholding tyranny by saying, oh, the the government really kind of has inherent authority if you think about it. That all needs to be undone. We have to undo the progressive era. The way you undo the progressive era is by arguing constitutionalism. And I wish that the states were doing that. So I think what has been updated in my perspective on it is that I think that right now is our best road, is that it starts with the states saying, we need to have our power back to enforce this. And then once it's now being handled at the state level, instead of us lobbying Biden or whoever's in office during that, when we're doing the lobbying, who's in the White House, now we're lobbying like state level representatives and governors. And that gets us, having it handled that much more decentralized, gets us however much closer to what the real goal is that, which is to the people, which is the end of the 10th Amendment, which is full decentralization and full privatization. So that's where I stand on that. Thanks.
Got a question from the internet. If a free society can only be sustained by moral people, what is the best way to message a moral lifestyle to libertarians?
If we're talking the objective morality of the Bible, then it means we can't be free, because like we all recognize that we are inherent. I mean, if we're going to go like spiritual or I guess Abrahamic religion with it, we're all born in sin. We all live in sin. So it depends on how moral that person means. But I would say this: you cannot have freedom without a prevailing sense of respect for each other as individual human beings. And if that's the morality we're talking about, then yeah, we absolutely need to have that. The reason that you are likely able to go about your day interacting or being in close proximity to thousands, tens of thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands of strangers, and still feel relatively safe enough to go about your day and do what it is that you're going to do, is because you have a reasonable expectation that everyone you interact with is going to have a basic level of respect that you are an individual human being. They're not going to try to rob you. They're not going to try to assault you or kill you or, God forbid, something else to you. And they, in turn, have a reasonable, similar level of respect that you will do the same to them, that you won't do the same to them. That's what allows us to live in a society, we'll call it a moral society or a high trust society or whatever you want to call it, that allows us to be able to prosper, allows us to be able to try to build a legacy and to reach our dreams, knowing that we aren't about to have people come in and just try to destroy us because they have a general, we all have a general expectation of that individual human respect. And if you look at the areas where crime is rampant and poverty is out of control, it's where people don't feel that. They actually have a reasonable expectation that one of those people is going to disrespect them and harm them as a result of that. And so I think it is absolutely necessary that we drive home that none of us can have the society we want if we don't have a reasonable expectation of individual human respect. And that starts with you. That starts with each one of us. And I'm preaching to the preachers here because we are here to respect and fight for everyone's individual human autonomy. But that's the message we have to have, that if we want to have safety, if we want to have happiness and prosperity and harmony and all of those things that we want, it's going to have to come with individual human respect. It's going to have to come with that. And if that's the morality we're talking about, or the basic ethic of you're not going to just harm someone because it's expedient or because they're in your way, then yeah, that's absolutely necessary. Or we cannot be free. We will not be free. Thank you. And I think there was another hand raised right before that. Right after that. Yes, hey.
What's your prediction for Argentina?
Very early on. I can tell you what I've seen so far has been very promising. I was at, in November when he got elected, I had a lot of caveats with my celebration. I'm like, listen, we don't know what this guy's about to do, but we can at least celebrate that he was a libertarian who got elected promising libertarian stuff. So if nothing else, if it turns out he gets in there and, he waffles, he doesn't do what he said he was going to do, he does the opposite, whatever. The reality is he said he was going to do it, and the people said, yes, we're voting for that. He said, I'm going to slash the size of government, and people showed up with chainsaws to say how much they supported it. That, if nothing else, was something to celebrate. So far, I've been largely happy with what I have seen. I'm not going to say I agree with every single thing, nor have I honestly followed it on such a granular hour by hour, day by day basis that I could say, but by the bulk of what I have seen has been he has slashed the number He has slashed regulations. I mean, the chainsaw narrative was accurate like that. It's like he's taking a chainsaw to it, and we're already beginning to see the benefits of that. And even the way he's handled the fact that there would be lots of people protesting it. He said, okay, fine, if you protest, but if you do damage, you're responsible for it. And if we find that you're instigating people to do harm to people and to threaten people and to do damage, we're gonna hold you liable for it. And if you get on the road and block people and make them feel unsafe, then you're going to be held responsible for it. And so that stuff's not happening. There are protests, but they're doing it on the sidewalk. They're doing actual peaceful protesting. They're doing peaceful assembly, which is fine. We want that. Even if it disagrees with us, we want peaceful assembly. And we continue to see benefits from it. We will see benefits from it if he continues to do it. I think that we're going to start to see in other countries, we're going to start seeing more and more libertarians getting elected, and they'll be running on either directly tying themselves to Milei, as we're seeing in Australia, where libertarians there are referring to themselves as Mileiists. I mean, they have completely adopted it. Or just other countries that look and go, yeah, we're going to do that here. Maybe not even mention him or try to tie themselves to him, but they're just going to be their version of that. I think we should be doing that. I think we should. It's not to say you have to act like Javier Milei. First of all, most of the people in here are not built to act like that for more than like 4 or 5 minutes. I mean, the amount of energy he has is insane. And that may not be your demeanor. You may not want to let people know what they can do with socialism, and it involves we should all be doing that. He doesn't pull punches. He doesn't go, well, I understand why. He says, they're scamming you. There's a video, I imagine just about everyone, who here has seen the Afuera video? And if you've seen it, then you know what I'm talking about. Okay, yeah, okay. So there's a video where he says, here's my plans for the government when I get elected. This was before he got elected. And he has all the different ministries on the board that he's going, and he has them listed out, the office of the president, the office of this, the ministry of this, the ministry of that, and he starts naming all the ones he's going to get rid of. So he says, Ministry of Social Services, afuera, which means out. And then he says, Ministry of the Environment, afuera, Ministry of Education, afuera. And there's one that, like, when he pulls it, it doesn't go. He pulls it again, and he says, even if you resist, and he ends it. I mean, he's like going at it, and he takes down all but like a handful of the ministries that he says are the core components of what a minarchist government should be. But then he goes to, after doing that display that we're sold. Oh, you're going to fuera all that? Yeah, good. We're on board. Then he goes to the public that probably is sitting there going, what? And he says, the political scam ends here. And I'm paraphrasing now. He says, the political scam ends here. They're not going to rob you anymore to keep you poor and in desperation. We're going to give it back to you. And then he said, but he got their attention with, this is what I'm going to do. And then he explained why. And now that wasn't the first time the people of Argentina had heard that, but it just showed an example of what he was doing. He wasn't just saying, hey, look at me, I'm an edgy libertarian. I mean, I do that sometimes, but he wasn't just doing that. He was saying, hey, look at me, I'm going to do this thing that might democracy is. You're being told a lie, and deep down you know it's a lie, and we have the solution to it. It's to get them out of it entirely and put the power back in your hands. With that kind of message, if he continues with that, and if he continues to have the successes that he has, I think we're going to be seeing that across the country. And I hope that this is the beginning of a domino effect or snowball effect or whatever you want to call it. And I'm certainly doing everything I can to try to make sure it takes root here. Thank you, Ben.
Put on your Swami Karnak hat and tell me why at Davos they let him speak, because he just moved Klaus right there in front of
He's an
everyone.
elected official.
Yeah.
They invite elected officials to speak. He's the head of state. They have to. They had to. They'd have to, if they didn't, they'd have to explain why he was the first head of state that they didn't let speak to the conference. And I love how he did that. Because he had explained many years ago his association with the World Economic Forum, that he was an economist, that they had invited Latin American economists to go up there. He was like, okay, so he went up there and he explained why socialism sucks and the free market's great. And they said, oh, hey, thanks for coming. And then they struck him from their YouTube channel so that no one would see it. They took him off the website. But then, so, we're finding out about him, and he's, World Economic Forum page, and people are like, is some WEF clown? Like, what is this? He let it kind of simmer. He would sometimes retweet that thing that he had said about, explaining it, but for the most part, he let it simmer. And then he said to the WEF, yeah, I'd like to come and speak to you. I was just recently elected. And they're like, yeah, okay. And he went up there and eviscerated them for 25 minutes. If you go to any of my social media channels, except Instagram, who wouldn't let me put it on there. I think it was just too long. But if you go to any of my social media channels, I put up the video with the English translation of him giving that speech, and he literally lays out how social closely, and you're going to find government intervention that caused that failure. And if you don't find it, look harder because you didn't see it the first time. He literally said that in front of Klaus Schwab and the rest of them. Okay? And what's crazy is, and this is what I talk about connecting with people. Now, this is Javier Milei, the guy who says, take your socialism and get your mother, and then, and I mean, he's very clear on what he does not pull his punches. He went in front of the WEF and he told the business people there, you're being scammed. You're the producers. You're the ones who've made our lives so much easier and better. And the political parasites that you're sitting next to have convinced you you're the bad guy because you made money doing it. You don't need these people. They can't exist without you. You should join me and drop them. Talk about meeting people. If you weren't letting these parasites live off of you, you'd actually be the best people on the planet. If he can connect with them, we can connect with normies who ask, what about the roads? Any questions? Yeah.
First off, congrats on the cat. And what changes do we need to make internally to bring that timeline closer?
So I would say it is not impossible for us to win the 2024 election. There's nothing legally stopping us from winning we could actually do it. I think the likelihood is what the likelihood is. Like it's what it's always been. It's not high. When we are able to successfully thread that needle or bridge that gap where a significant percentage of the population says, wow, I am being robbed. Wow, they are the only ones with the answer. I don't care if they lose. I'm voting for them anyway, which is why I advocate that we mostly talk to people who don't vote or haven't voted in a while. Because they already once we do that, we bridge that gap and we get a significant portion of people to realize that the status quo has failed them, then at that point it's all over about the crying. It might not happen in that cycle, it might be the next one or the one after that, but when we see that a significant percentage of the population goes, libertarians are right, they were always right, I don't care if they lose or not, they're the only ones I support, that's when we'll know that it's was for those who don't know, when my wife and I were in Barbados, a feral cat started coming around our home there, and she wouldn't leave. And we tried everything. We tried feeding it at night. We tried feeding it during the day. We tried feeding it all the time. And yet for some reason it just wouldn't leave. That worked. But so we kept feeding her, and she, I guess this is the story of the welfare state. She wouldn't leave. And she sought comfortable mediocrity instead of going out and making a life for herself. Anyway, so she was she kept coming around, and it was obvious she was like a pet, but she was such a young kitten that she had never been in a house, but she just, the demeanor was great. But we aren't cat people, and we're never home. Case in point, I'm not home right now. And so we weren't gonna be able to have a pet. And so in retrospect, I probably shouldn't have posted it. I just thought it was funny that my wife. But anyway, she's not my cat. We knew that we could not bring her here. But what we did, we found a humane trapper who had a family who absolutely fell in love with her on the photos alone. We paid to get her trapped and vetted, and now she's with that family. Where I am told that one of her favorite things, her name is Zoe, one of her favorite things to do is when her father, when the looks at it. So I'm hoping he follows me, because then Zoe will continue to see my content on social media. But she's doing great, and she is in a home, and she is not my cat. She's literally legally not my cat. So thank you for that. I can probably take one more question, and then they're going to kick me off the stage so you can hear from the candidates for your nomination. You're not going to do that where there's room for one more question, and then you don't ask the question. Hey, Ted.
Where's your lovely wife?
She's at home. We were gone for the last couple of weeks of 23 and the first couple of weeks of 24, and so she's back home dealing with all the stuff that mounts up when you're gone for a month. And if anyone's going to LibertyCon, she will be there with me. But she did ask me to give my love and her love and regards to everyone here, and her regret that she couldn't be here.
But she has to be feeding a new cat.
Yes, no. The cat's still in Barbados, but yeah, no, she's taking care of all the stuff we got to do so we can. She allows me to be able to go around here and play with my libertarian friends, as she calls it. So I still can take one more question. Amen.
I guess I'm tired of people accusing me of wasting my vote.
Yeah.
And you say libertarian, and that's the first thing that comes out of their mouth.
Yeah.
Is there any thought to changing the name of the party?
To the wasted vote part? Became a running theme where people would show their I voted sticker or take a picture of their ballot and they go, I wasted my vote. And that there was a ton of people in there. Then it got weird towards the end because like one woman was wearing like kind of a low cut shirt when she did it. And so then it became like people wearing less and less clothes saying I wasted my vote. There was like one lady who just put the stickers on the thing. It takes all kinds. And then I made the mistake of thinking, I'm going down a rabbit hole here, but I think one of the ladies, because I just saw I wasted my vote, didn't bother looking at the picture. And I said, hey, thanks. Well, she was one of the nipple ones. And so, and so her boyfriend was like, oh, look at this fake spike. Oh, wow. Up until this moment, I thought I was Spike Cohen. And then I wanted to say, why are you mad at me instead of your girlfriend? Anyway, you had an actual good question there. So I want to talk about the wasted vote. A thing that I have said quite a few times that usually lands when people say, wasting your vote, throwing your vote away and all that stuff. I'll say, how do you usually vote? And they'll tell me. And I'll say, why do you vote that? Like, what are the things that matter to you? And they'll tell me. I'll go, how's that working? And there's a pause and I go, who wasted their vote? I voted for my values. I voted for what I actually want to see. I know that in almost every case, the likelihood of who I voted for winning is very low, which means I already know I'm going to lose anyway. Because whichever of the two heads of the uniparty Republican, good cop, bad cop scam, whatever you want to call it, wins, I'm already losing. So I'm going to use my vote to push forward what I want to see. And if it wins, fantastic. And if it doesn't win, I still did my values. It sounds like you wasted your vote by voting for something you knew was going to fail because you were afraid that your team might lose. That's not only a waste or throwing away your vote, that's a surrender. It depends on how much you want to beat this person up to say the surrender part, but to say you have basically acknowledged that your participation, as long as you do it the way you're doing, it doesn't matter. Your participation doesn't actually matter because you're voting for something you don't even really believe in the hopes that the thing you believe less in doesn't win. But you know the same thing's going to happen either way. So ask yourself why you're wasting your vote. You got to follow up there.
Well, you didn't answer the question.
Should we change our name to the Wasted Vote Party? I fully support one of the delegates here putting that up for a vote, and I will leave it up to your state affiliate to decide whether to change their name to the Wasted Vote Party. And I certainly will not weigh in on that at all. That's up to you. It is 2:00 right now, so I'm going to wrap up and let the candidates get up here for their debate. I just want to close by saying this. We're the only ones who have the ideas that we have. And I say we meaning libertarians. The benefit of being a libertarian is twofold. Number one, and it's just about everyone but yourself. You know it. We all know it deep down. That's the beauty of it. No, but seriously, we know what's going to fix this. We know what's going to fix the problems that we have. We know no one else is proposing anything but ideas that will make it worse or continue for it to be bad as it is, which means it has to be us. There's no plot twist that's going to come where some other character comes out with a better idea. It has to be us. It's going to be us. Sooner. And that's why you're here. That's why I'm here. And I could not be more honored to be fighting alongside folks like you in our fight for liberty. I love y'all. Thank you so much for being here. Keep fighting for